Hi, this is Scott Tipton, and I wanted to take this opportunity to give you a little bit of an update of some actions that we've had here in the Congress over this past week. Was very pleased to be able to see that we were able to navigate through the Natural Resources Subcommittee our legislation for the designation of Chimney Rock in southwestern Colorado for a national monument. That will now move on to the full House Natural Resources Committee, and we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to get it out of there and then move it on to the full floor. I was very grateful that Senator Bennett came over to lend his support out of the Colorado delegation for this important piece of legislation which preserves a great archaeological treasure for the state of Colorado, with the side benefit that we're going to be able to achieve this without the expenditure of any more federal dollars to be added to it. We also had a piece of legislation that we just recently introduced that I'd like to update you on. It's called Education and Energy. I think an important piece of legislation. Coming out of the state legislature in my 2 years there, and as many of you well know, one of the great challenges we face in our state is our ability to be able to fund education. We all believe and we understand the importance of being able to educate our children and the need for resources, given that so much of our district is non-taxable. It's federal, state, or tribal lands. This is a good piece of legislation which serves that end while putting local control back to the state of Colorado with those resources. The way education and energy works, we would attach federal royalties, which must by law be collected when we extract minerals off of federal properties. 33% of those revenues would come back to our state, to the impacted area, with no federal strings attached. Getting local control, making local decisions, entrusting our local school boards, our local teachers, our moms and dads, the people who love, care, and know the best how to be able to reach our children. Second portion of this bill would take an additional 17% of those federal royalties to make sure that it's divided up amongst the other states in the country. The second part of this legislation also allows for what's called new authority leasing, to be able to expand oil and gas development responsibly, again returning to impacted states and dividing up 17% to go out to the rest of the states for education with no strings attached. It's very important that we also note in this legislation that there are no changes made to the NEPA process. We all love and appreciate the beautiful clean air and water which we have in Colorado, and this would not impact it at all. But it does provide a sustainable revenue source to be able to fund education back in our district. We're also very pleased to see that the small business subcommittee that I chair, that oversees energy, ag, and trade, had a real impact. Recently held a hearing in terms of the GIPSA ruling, which impacts our packers, the beef industry, the cattle industry in Colorado, is going to be able to affect jobs in terms of if new rulings have gone through. Through that oversight hearing, we were informed this morning, and we're cautiously optimistic that this will hold, that they're pulling back on those regulations, which it would have increased cost to our local providers, cost jobs, and hurt the agricultural industry, which I'm fully committed to standing up and fighting for. We also have the Ag Bill, which is now coming up. Recently met with Chairman Lucas and expressed our serious concerns over the potential impacts that may be coming out of the Select Committee and decisions and how it would impact agriculture in Colorado. Had a very clear message when we dealt with the Cattlemen's Association, the Farm Bureau, the dairy producers in our state as well, that we need to make sure that we're protecting the research which allows us to be able to safely produce our products, some of the conservation programs that are there as well. And we're going to continue to work on this legislation and do want to be able to receive your input as well. Just yesterday we passed 2 access to capital bills out of the House of Representatives. I think it's very worthy of note in this day and age when we hear that there's nothing but conflict and inability to be able to get along, that both pieces of access to capital legislation passed with better than 400 votes out of the House of Representatives. Then they now join, I believe it's now 19 other pieces of legislation that are sitting on the doorstep of the United States Senate waiting for action. We have to have our Senate start to act on these bills. It's incredibly important As I travel throughout the 3rd Congressional Districts, this is about jobs. This is about the economy. And we get it down to that very most important point. It's about your family, your ability to be able to provide for your family. We have to get this economy moving. 2 good pieces of legislation, which join the piece of legislation that Congressman Perlmutter and I are co-sponsoring, called the CAMS Act, the Capital Access to Main Street, which would help free up resources for banks to be able to loan to small businesses, again, to be able to create jobs. We have a great opportunity to be able to get this country moving again. Right now, again, in the United States Senate, we have those pieces of legislation. And I'd invite you to look it up. We have what's called now the Forgotten 15, or we could call it now the Tardy 22, with the additional legislation that we've passed out of the House of Representatives that's sitting in the United States Senate waiting for action. Incredibly important that we stand up for Americans, we put the politics aside, because when I look in all of your eyes at home, I'm seeing people that are concerned about their futures, concerned about their neighbors, their friends, their family. We have to get this economy moving. We have that opportunities to be able to work together to rebuild that American dream and to be able to create those opportunities. Thank you, and if you do have any comments or questions, please feel free to contact our office here in Washington, our district offices in Grand Junction, Cortez, Alamosa, or over in Pueblo as well. Thank you.